For over a dozen years, Vladimir Putin has tried to get fracking banned. He hates the idea that the American shale industry has made America energy independent. He spent billions lobbying to end fracking and also promoting fringe environmental groups who opposed fracking. These are well-documented facts. At the same time, the Chinese government was desperate for oil and livid when America took the energy output from the Keystone Pipeline. They knew that that would allow Americans to benefit from North American energy production rather than making it available to the Chinese market. Both Putin's Russia and Xi's China had specific objectives regarding American energy policy. They needed a certain outcome that would benefit their nations even at the expense of American consumers. American energy-producing states like Oklahoma and Texas, they needed a different outcome. That's even true for some states that supposedly voted for Biden, such as New Mexico and Pennsylvania. Then we had the big election of 2020. There were lots of debates and lots of promises given. Joe Biden was declared the winner and began to implement his energy policies almost immediately. Which side did he choose? American consumers and energy producers, or Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping? Join me in the Economic War Room, where we will meet with our energy expert, Troy Andrews, to dissect the Biden energy policy, see who it benefits, and what we can and should do about it. This will impact your life and your finances, and you need to get prepared. Troy, welcome back to the Economic War Room.
It's good to be here, Kevin.
You know, last time you were here, we had an entirely different political administration, entirely different goals. But you've been in the energy industry through a lot of administrations. What is it, 30 years, something like that?
Yeah, 30 years, yep.
Yeah, so let's go back in time to the good old days, meaning last year or the year before, about what American energy policy was under the Trump administration. What were things like just not long ago?
Well, I think the easiest way to describe it is that President Trump tried to make it easier to get access to the industry, to move through regulations. There was just an overburdened regulation system that was put into place in the prior administration, and he tried to alleviate that. That was probably the best way to describe it.
He tried to smooth things out so we could produce more energy. Let me ask a quick question. If we don't produce energy here, where does it get produced?
It gets produced overseas, and then we're beholden to whatever
Overseas,
country.
Meaning
yeah,
Iran,
Iran,
Middle
Iraq,
East.
Middle East, Russia, those places, even Canada from a certain perspective.
Let's talk about just the Middle East and Russia. Do they have the cleanest energy policies or policies for producing oil and gas? Do they conform to the same strict environmental standards that we do here?
Oh, absolutely not. We're between us and Canada, we're the most premier country as far as environmental cleanliness as it relates to the energy space.
So just because we stop production of energy here doesn't mean we stop the demand for energy here, right?
No, I mean the carbon footprint will just spread over there, and the carbons will be released into the atmosphere in those countries.
And it'll be worse.
It'll be much worse.
All right. So bottom line is Biden administration comes in, and they're going to bring in this new environmental approach that's being pushed by these environmental groups, many of which have been funded by Vladimir Putin. And they're now pushing. So how does that change from what we saw under the Trump administration to the Biden administration?
Well, I think what we've seen initially, there's a lot of unknowns with what's going to happen. There's been a stay on any new federal permits related to drilling, related to easements, related to any aspect of anything that you would need to get on federal lands. And there's a lot of questions on what that means. So I guess there's a level of uncertainty for the next 60 days on what his actual policies are going to be, except to say that there is going to be a tightening down of policy as it relates to energy.
Now, I'm not uncertain. I think he's headed to banning fracking. I think that's exactly, he said very publicly. Let's watch this clip from the debate that he had with President Trump and see what he actually said about fracking.
And what about fracking?
All right,
now,
let me allow Vice President Biden to respond.
I never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is
Show
he's
the list.
flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking.
So you heard him. He said, I do rule out banning fracking. And yet, in the first days of his administration, the first thing he did was put a pause on fracking on federal lands, right?
Absolutely, and the unfortunate thing for that is that a lot of the Native American tribes that support the policies of the current administration are being hurt by the fact that they get a lot of their revenue from their oil industry that's on the reservation. We've even seen them reach out to the Department of Interior with letters saying, you can't do that on our sovereign lands, and this is unconstitutional and those sorts of things. I mean, it's hurting.
Worried.
Yeah, they're very worried. It's hurting the Native American tribes in America, where a lot of this is.
And you worked with the Native American tribes.
I did.
You understand there's a lot of need there. There's a lot of poverty there. They use their energy production to help pay for their health care.
Yep.
To provide for education, to provide for people that need food and assistance.
Yeah, public services, all kinds of things.
And so banning fracking on federal lands would just crush them.
Oh, there's no question. And it's not just one tribe, it's many.
Now, who benefits? Who would benefit if you ban fracking?
Well, the benefit would be other countries. The administrations of Russia and Saudi Arabia and Iran and Iraq and those sorts of places, Venezuela, places where the oil and gas industry can flourish and bring products into the U.S.
So it helps our adversaries and enemies.
Yeah.
It hurts Native American tribes. It hurts consumers because energy prices will go up. It makes us dependent. It hurts our nation as a whole.
Well, I think the best way to describe it, just at a high level, is that energy business in the U.S. is a national security issue, and it was deemed so by many administrations. So if it's a national security issue, that's all you need to know.
Right. All right, we're going to need to take a break. But when we come back, I want to drill down a little bit more into this because I want to talk about the investment implications, how it's going to impact those who invest in the energy industry. And you've got a long history of that. There's potentially a lot of money to be made if you understand what's happening around you and you take advantage of the opportunities.
Yeah.
So let's take a break and then we'll be back and talk about the investment implications of the Biden energy policy. Welcome back. We've been speaking with Troy Andrews. He's a friend of mine for a long time. He's developed a pipeline. I remember when he first brought to me the business plan for it. He's going to develop oil reserves in the Bakken Shale in North Dakota, and he's going to transport them where they needed to go. Just an incredible genius in the energy industry and a long-term friend. So, Troy, you built a pipeline.
Kind.
Tell us a little briefly about that story.
Yeah. So I've been working up in the Bakken, North Dakota Bakken Shale since about 2012. 2011 timeframe, and there was a lot of trucking and rail of products. It's a long ways from the market. It was a new shale play, pretty vast, lots of oil reserves, and so they really needed pipeline infrastructure. So I had an idea to build some pipelines and connect across the lake from one aspect of the space to another, north of the lake, south of the lake, build it all together so that products could get out of the basin a little more economically, and because the producers take a much lower net back because of the trucking and rail that has to take place to get to market.
Yeah, so you built a pipeline, it tied into the Keystone.
Well, it's tied into the Dakota Access.
Dakota Access, okay. So how does the Keystone ruling that Biden did, how does that impact?
It doesn't impact the space in North Dakota, but overall as a policy, it impacts the entire energy space in North America. If you got to think about pipelines in terms of what is the best way to move a molecule of oil and gas? Is it truck? Is it rail? Or is it pipeline?
Well, obviously it's pipeline. I mean, you don't want to put it on trucks and drive it everywhere. You have an accident, you got a spill. Rail. The most efficient way is obviously pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, if the average person in America understood how safe a pipeline is and the kind of technology, think about it in these terms. 10 years ago, we couldn't drill proven oil reserves because we didn't have technology. So what do you think the technology improvements in pipelines have been over the last 10 years? Now we can go get that crude oil.
Right.
What do you think about pipelines? It's unbelievable what they can do. I mean, they take electricity, they put them in the pipeline, it allows it to not rust, the coatings that it has on it, the thickness of the pipe, it's amazing the technology that they have.
Right, so it's a bunch of misinformation being fed to people about how dangerous pipelines are. They really are safe. And that's just one element of the energy industry. Tell us about investing in energy. It's about midstream and upstream and downstream.
Yeah.
Explain those.
Okay, so midstream is the space that I'm in. Upstream is the drilling wells, the actual fracking that they talk about. They bring the oil out of the ground, the natural gas, some water elements come with it. That's upstream. Midstream is where I'm at. That's taking products from the wellhead, delivering it to delivery hubs by pipeline, storage tanks, those sorts of things.
Right.
And downstream is refined fuels, natural gas, infrastructure, LDCs, delivering it to your homes, those sorts of things.
Refining and marketing.
Right.
So when you go to the gas station, that's the downstream.
Absolutely, that's downstream.
You're buying it there.
Yeah.
And
C-stores,
they all have different investment aspects to them.
Absolutely.
Your business, as long as you're using energy and it's flowing through, as long as oil and gas is flowing through the pipelines, you get paid regardless of what the price is, really, pretty much.
Yep.
Upstream, you want to get the best price. So if oil prices are high, that becomes more profitable.
Yeah.
And downstream, actually, sometimes with lower energy prices, you sell more gasoline, you get more people through your store. So they all have their unique dynamics.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
So we've become energy independent.
Yep.
As a nation, but for the first time with the Biden administration, I'm hearing rumblings that that's going to go away very quickly.
Well, to be honest with you, if you ban fracking, if that's his intent and that's what he ends up doing, it would devastate the industry on the oil and gas side. We have, as much oil, we have huge amounts of gas infrastructure and gas reserves. Right. And
they're clean. That's why America has actually lowered our carbon footprint. We've beaten the other nations in the Paris Climate Accord because we have been using our clean natural gas.
Yeah. It's interesting to get into accords with other countries and then we hold up our end and they don't hold up theirs and we put in millions and millions of taxpayer dollars.
And yet there is this enormous push from environmentalists and from the ESG movement and everything to divest anything to do with American energy. So I think if you put up the chart, I think there's $14 trillion that's been pulled out of investment in fossil fuels.
Yeah, yeah. It's seemingly a political movement more than it is a reasonable movement or
Right.
a reason-based movement.
Because it's really not improving the environment. It may be worsening the environment because that same energy is being produced in Middle East, in Russia, and other places that don't have our standards. It's also worsening the environment potentially if we're pushing to China and we're going to the green new ideas, which is wind turbines and electric cars and all of that, which are beneficial in some areas, but in other ways, they're forcing rare earth minerals and other problems, which China, of course, loves the idea that we ban fossil fuels.
Yeah, I think the average person in America doesn't understand the rare earth minerals issue. The fact that we have very little of that here in the U.S.
That we're allowed to get.
Yeah.
We actually have more, but the environmentalists have stopped us.
Exactly. I mean, we tend to stop ourselves and then let other countries, provide all of that for us. And I don't think the average person in the U.S. understands that.
Yeah. Well, here's the issue. From an investment standpoint, I think energy stocks, oil and gas stocks, have become the new tobacco stocks. Nobody wants to own them, which is a dangerous thing, because if we don't have investment in our energy industry, we will be completely energy dependent.
Yeah.
Which is bad for our economy, bad for consumers, bad for the environment, bad for people in general, bad for the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to me over the even to be honest with you, towards the end of the Trump administration and into this one, Wall Street has really not wanted to put much money into the energy space. It's been less and less focused on. There's been a lot of private equity companies that have gotten out of the space altogether, and so it's been a space that is there's a lot of risk. In certain aspects, but if you understand the risk, then you understand the opportunities that are in there. Risk creates opportunity, as you know.
Can be very lucrative if you know what you're doing. The problem is you need advice.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about the kind of advice that you need, where do you get that advice, and what America can and should be doing right now with our investments to promote energy independence. Let's take a break. Where we left off with Troy Andrews is we were talking about America's need for energy investments and energy independence, and how the Wall Street movement, which is literally ESG, environmental, social justice, and governance, has been working against that. So the question we have now is, should we be energy independent? I think the answer is a resounding yes. If we import all of our oil at the same time that our dollar is weakening, our economy is going to be in big trouble. Globally, the world is dependent on a petrodollar. That means all oil traded globally was priced in dollars, and that gave us a huge advantage, and it was important. But Russia and China have been fighting to stop that. In fact, the Chinese have begun trading oil and oil futures in renminbi, or the Chinese yuan. That's created a problem for our economy. So what are we going to do about this? We brought Troy Andrews in, and Troy is not only an energy expert, he's also one of our board members at the NSIC Institute, National Security Investment Consultant Institute. So Troy, let's talk about energy independence and investment and how the two are closely tied together.
Yeah, what's interesting is our independence on the energy side created, in my view, over the Trump administration and into this administration, where you can put together a good energy strategy for investment. But as you start peeling back the onion and start adding regulations and uncertainty, then it's really important to have an advisor or an advice, because the strategy is going to be ever changing and the opportunities are going to be different from one aspect to another. As far as buying debt, making investments in midstream, making investments in upstream, how much investment should I make? All those things are going to be changing as regulations are put in place.
Now, you mentioned buying debt, and before we started talking about this, before we came on camera, you were sharing with me that there's debt of great American energy producers that will not default, and yet it's selling at a massive discount. Why?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, because people are uncertain. They don't know. The people that own the debt, they might own debt for a living, like they trade in and out of debt, but sometimes they don't know, and then they hear the administration puts a freeze on federal fracking and easements, and what does that mean? What's going to happen? What's going to happen with Dakota Access?
Get me out. That's what they're saying. Just get me out.
Yeah, they're like, they want to test the waters, and so they see how much somebody's willing to buy their debt position for. And that debt trades at a, either a premium or, well, never a premium, but a, slight
Sharp
discount or whatever, and depending on inflation and those sorts of things. But the debt in a lot of these companies that have taken on debt over the last 5-6 years are trading at a discount. And it's pretty illiquid, but there's opportunities out there for that.
Yeah. Because if you're in the energy business, it's cash. I mean, it's producing. This is not like the internet business where you hope that someday you may get a return on it. You get real returns. It's a real commodity. People are using it on a daily basis. They depend on it.
Yeah.
Unlike tobacco stocks, where we saw the demand for tobacco use went sharply lower. We're not getting off oil and gas anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see energy as a political issue. Both sides of the aisle have to use energy.
Right.
So keeping energy low for America and for Americans and secure for Americans should be of utmost importance to any administration.
And if you ban fracking and if you eliminate the American shale industry, what's that going to do to prices?
Oh, they're going to go up, no question. We're going to have to get our products from another country.
And if you have that energy available to you to sell, the price will be up. You'll actually make more money potentially.
Yeah, I mean, the higher the price, to be honest with you, in my business, the better, because producers are making tons of money when they extract it out of the ground, and they're going to keep extracting it because they're making so much money to the extent that they can, and they're not banned from doing it. They're gonna go to areas that are outside the federal jurisdiction, and they're gonna drill in those areas, or they're
gonna make more money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Consumers will end up paying for it.
Yeah. They're gonna invest in other countries and plays in Mexico and other places where you're gonna see non-traditional areas become a little more important, where it's a little more expensive to drill.
So $14 trillion has been taken out of the energy industry through divestment. $14 trillion removed over time. That means the demand for capital and the value of that capital is actually going to go up, right?
Yeah, yep.
Because the supply of capital is lower, the need for it is still there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the markets always overreact to things. And so, there's been a massive pullback and to be honest with you, a lot of private equity groups are backed by pension funds and teachers union pension funds and those sorts of things, where the politics of what's being invested in, almost the weaponizing of that money, has happened. You know?
So that's why we've created the National Security Investment Consultant Institute. Energy is a national security issue.
Absolutely.
And we've got advisors getting trained from people like you on important topics. How do you invest in energy? And it really isn't easy, is it?
No. I mean, you need to know what you're doing, and you need to know the companies. I mean, every company is managed and operated a little bit differently. Every company has a certain amount of risk profile, and some companies, it's just good to have an advisor that can help you. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're a part of that. Also a part of it is our friend, Lieutenant General Stephen Quast.
Oh, yeah.
And he talks about space and water and a lot of other things. But we train advisors in a big way to help their clients make money and also to help America.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. We're going to stand strong against the globalist agenda, and I'm glad, Troy, that you're a part of that.
I appreciate it.
What we're seeing play out is perhaps the most intense economic warfare you'll ever see. That's because the battle for control of America is largely about the money. If we lose our energy independence, we could lose our economy. The progressive agenda is frightening, and they're fighting with great intensity. Their plans are in many cases despicable. They're talking about creating economic dependence, not independence. They're talking about re-education camps so that we think properly, and limits on speech, and intentions to take over the voting process, whether by machines or removing the Electoral College or lowering the voting age or making new states or packing the Supreme Court. These are all real agendas. And ultimately, they're agendas for them to make money at your expense. This is our time to stand up for America. The pressure is enormous on all of us to give up now. It won't be so bad. Get in the car, get on the train. But we need to stand up and fight for our lives and fight for the future of our children and our grandchildren. So you heard Troy Andrews, the energy industry, it's under fire, but we can help. We need to get our financial advisors to the Economic War Room training at economicwarroom.com/advisor. And then we need to get those advisors into the National Security Investment Consultant Institute. America's future depends on this. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. You can get your free economic battle plan for this special report with Troy Andrews at economicwarroom.com. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.